So what am I going to be presenting today? This is going to be a little bit of an overview of CHARGE syndrome. You'll be getting much more detail about several aspects of CHARGE in later presentations. But I'll talk a little bit about where the name came from, the epidemiology of CHARGE, the genetics, and then I'll spend most of my time going through the diagnostic criteria. How do we determine that this is CHARGE syndrome and not some other condition? So I'll be talking about the major diagnostic features and the supporting features in making a diagnosis. There are many other features of CHARGE that are not particularly helpful in making the diagnosis, but can be very important for the children and individuals who have CHARGE, and I'll review those briefly. I'll talk a little bit about the sensory deficits and how they, along with the features of CHARGE, affect development in children. A little bit about outcome and just an overview of all sorts of things. As I say, you'll be getting a lot more detail about many of these things on later presentations. Most of the information that I'm covering today can be found in the paper Genetic Counseling in CHARGE Syndrome by Hefner and Fossey in the December 2017 issue of the American Journal of Medical Genetics. That entire issue is devoted to CHARGE syndrome, and so there are lots of articles in there on many aspects of it. Summaries of all the articles and links to the articles themselves can be found at the CHARGE Syndrome Foundation website, which is chargesyndrome.org. Okay, so CHARGE, where does this name come from? The name CHARGE was coined in 1981 by Pagan et al. They had just recognized this syndrome that involved many different features, and they wanted to have a way to describe it, and so they took some of the features and made it into a clever acronym. And this was C for coloboma, H for heart anomalies, A for atresia of the choanae, R for retardation of growth and development, G for genital urinary anomalies, and E for ear anomalies and/or deafness. So it's a nice name, it's great, but even back then they recognized that this acronym doesn't at all cover even some of the most important features of this syndrome. So we still use the name, but I really want to stress that we do not use the acronym features either for diagnosis or to describe the syndrome. How often does CHARGE happen? CHARGE occurs in about 1 to every 10 to 12,000 births worldwide. That may sound like it's very rare, but in genetics, we're dealing with rare conditions. And among the rare conditions, CHARGE is actually relatively common and well known now. All medical geneticists are familiar with it, and many actually have a fair bit of expertise with it. CHARGE is the most common genetic cause of deaf blindness. And by deaf blindness, I mean combined hearing and vision loss. It's a very serious syndrome that involves a lot of birth defects in many of the children, and of those who are born alive, we think that about 15 to 20% of them do not survive to age 3. The highest mortality is in those with complex heart defects along with breathing issues. And morbidity and mortality do remain increased throughout life for people who have CHARGE.